You were almost yelling at me a minute ago.
I didn't mean to.
You went from talking normal to, I understand, but...
Welcome to the Charlotte Buzz, where we drink beer from local breweries while telling stories about the neighborhoods they're from. I'm Chrissy, and this is Drew.
Today, we're drinking Kevin's Hazy Galaxy Dipper from Legal Remedy. It is a smash style hazy dipper.
Which means single malt and single hop, S-M-A-S-H. Clever.
Brewed with 100% Pilsner malt and generously hopped with 100% Galaxy hops. Do you want me to wait on the notes? See if you
Maybe. I'm
get it
struggling
right.
with this full growler right here.
Need to do some forearm workouts.
Apparently. Time to glug it and foam it.
Or not.
Hey, check me out.
Whoa.
Teamwork. Why have we not teamworked a pour until, what is this, episode 13?
Yeah.
With a bonus, so 14 episodes in before we finally share responsibility here.
Well, I didn't want to do the mansplaining version of... if you wanted to do it, I was going to let you do it.
You're lucky, because, yeah, I'd have fought you on that, too. Rude. All right, so we're going to taste it before you give me the flavor notes?
Yep.
All right. Galaxy Dipper.
Yep.
Okay.
Kevin's. Whoever Kevin is.
If he's the Kevin from their website, I know who he is.
Oh. And
Hashtag creeping.
Are you going to tell us about him or no?
No, I mean, he's one of the brewers.
Oh, okay.
That's about it. I mean,
that makes
there's
sense.
a blurb, but one of the brewers.
So you could say that the lemon drop IPA they have could also be Kevin's.
It could be. He's not the head brewer,
Okay.
but he is a brewer. If I read all of the profiles on the employees, and if I'm thinking of the correct one, and I say that because there's a dozen or so on there, not exaggerating, and one of them was he was hired as a bartender and was quickly pushed into the back to be one of the brewers because of his kind of talent and understanding. So I believe that was Kevin. I might be mixing them up because there were several that I read right in a row, but
Okay.
definitely Dippa in terms of like a thickness texture type of, like I'm starting to get a better understanding for the feel of it in my mouth between a Dippa, regular IPA, a Tippa, and a Quippa, and even just, you know, a non-IPA style.
A sippa, a dippa.
Ooh, a
Tippa and a
Sippa. I love it. Well done, sir. So it definitely has that kind of consistency or texture feel.
Okay. Quick note for our viewers. If you can't see below my neck, it's because I'm wearing camo.
Oh my God. Yeah, you're just a floating head here in this podcast.
Better than a green screen.
But if you move a little bit,
Them to see it.
a little bit.
Shadows.
Yikes. I almost want to say it's kind of earthy, which seems ironic because it's a galaxy.
Which would earn our unearthly.
I don't really know what to call certain flavors. I almost wanted to say piney, and I'm like, I don't believe it is at all. But so earthy is where I went with it.
If you've had a really piney beer, you know it. I had like a Magic Hat, something or another one time that was
This is not overly fruity.
pine tree in a bottle.
It's not like, and we've had a lot of fruity beers that aren't sweet, but this isn't very sweet either. I don't think I have a good explanation for an actual flavor profile just yet, though.
Do you have a passion for it?
I see what you did there. I'm guessing there's passion fruit in here.
Yes, a note of it.
A note of it. I may or may not be missing it because I've been so overpowered with mango and dragon fruit lately with this new Starbucks drink I've been getting. Maybe that's why it's not as sweet or fruity to me. I don't know. What do you think about it? It'll drink.
Yes,
I'm happy with it.
It'll drink. I really got nothing on this one.
It's really hard. Like, it tastes like beer. Like,
Yeah.
I am struggling to find a distinct flavor profile to actually explain. Other than texture-wise, it's clearly a DIPA.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoy it. But, yeah, to pull specific flavors out of it, I'm struggling.
Oh, I didn't say it's 8.3%.
Okay.
So, a little bit stronger. Even for a DIPA, that's kind of like a high-end DIPA,
All right.
I'd say.
So what do you have flavor note-wise? Well, I mean, if you have any other comments about what you think about it, feel free. But if not...
I almost think nothing about it.
Okay.
Notes of citrus and passion fruit. I'm not getting any citrus, but...
Yeah, me neither. I'm not getting anything of anything. I just think it tastes like beer.
I mean, yeah, it's solid.
Yeah.
I mean, it's good. Mm-hmm. Even. It's just... I don't know.
It's really hard to pull any distinct flavors out of it. Yeah, I agree. But worth a shot. Maybe go test it for yourself and tell us what you think, because...
Maybe because it's...
Maybe we suck at life.
Smash.
We know we do.
It's just... There's just not that much there.
It's just not as accentuated as it could be. I could see that. Definitely, I think, a more interesting one because of that. Because there's been several beers where we're like, oh, kind of this, kind of that, you know, whatever. Some that we've been dead on about. And, yeah, this one is, not bad at all. Just not describable. Not distinctive.
Yeah. Maybe the fact that it's not distinctive makes it distinctive, though.
I mean, it could be. I see where you're going with. But, I mean, you're not wrong either. So, Legal Remedy Brewing is in Rock Hill, South Carolina. And in 2009, there were 5 folks who got together, and they often refer to their existence as a lawyer, a landscape architect, 2 bankers, and a computer guy. And they came together one night and, as most breweries have, said, hey, let's start a brewery. And in 2009 began home brewing. And then in 2014, they had officially become Legal Remedy Brewing, brewed their first batch as such. And then 9 months later, in 2015, they purchased
The land?
their building, which used to actually be an auto dealer. And the rest is history. So like I said, they do have not like super long profiles, but, you know, short paragraph about each of their main employees on their website. They've got a bunch of the founders on there, and then, you know, brewers and social media strategists and those kinds of different things. And one thing we did want to just say was a quick thank you to Legal Remedy, because they were also one of our early adopters and supporters of the Buzz Bracket. Yeah. So thanks for that. And we're excited to see them in it next year as well.
One thing. Are you moving on to something else?
Go ahead.
If you're going to the brewery, the brewery experience is very restaurant forward.
Yes.
They do have a large menu as far as breweries go.
Yeah, it's a lot like going to Heist, which we walked in and I was not expecting a restaurant with a brewery. I was expecting more of just the brewery with a side menu, and made a comment of it while we were there. Yeah, there's a hostess, you get seated, that whole shebang. I didn't think about it, thought it was super strange, and then Drew reminded me that, hey, Heist is the same way, and I was like, you're not wrong. So
yeah, very restaurant forward if you're going there.
Still very good, great atmosphere, indoor, outdoor seating, that whole 9. We went in the middle of a storm and still sat outside, but it was a good time. But We will be talking about Rock Hill and a little bit of South Carolina. I was going to say history. It doesn't have to be history. I just always assume it is because that's how we tend to lean. But
that's what I'm doing. So.
Okay, so we'll be talking a little bit about Rock Hill history today. So I'm going to turn it over to you and see what you got. Well, tell me things.
One way I find my stories is I look for historical landmark signs.
Okay.
Not physically look for them, but
you didn't wander around
on the interwebs. Mm-hmm. And I came across this one that is located on East White Street. Mm-hmm. That says Sims home site. So I was like, this guy must be important if they cared about where his home was.
Sure.
So I did a little digging into him. He is Robert Mormon Sims, not like Mormon.
So he was a Mormon who created the Sims video game.
Nope, it's 2 O's. Maybe it's Moorman.
So we're talking like Mooresville, Mormon.
Yeah,
not
sure.
Mormon.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I found out this guy knows 2 things.
Yes.
Planting crops and war.
I mean, we are in the South. That sounds about right.
So he was a graduate of the Citadel, which is...
Well, I'm sorry. Did we go to Game of Thrones? What?
The Citadel? Yeah. It's the military college of South Carolina.
Huh.
Quite popular. Didn't know you knew about that. Maybe it's just popular down here.
Yeah, I didn't. I mean, I know of...
VMI.
No, what's the A1? Military.
Antietam?
No.
Annapolis?
Yeah, Annapolis.
I don't know what Antietam's like.
Antietam is a battlefield up in my neck of the woods because I'm very familiar with that actually.
Annapolis, yeah.
But,
that's the Navy one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a movie about it. That's why I know about it. But yes, carry on. Sorry.
So he went.
No, you said the Citadel, and I 100% went to Game of Thrones. I was like, I know that's not what you meant, but go ahead.
So went to the military college. Knows about war. He was a planter, and according to the 1860 census, he owned 21 slaves, and his land holdings were worth $52,000, which
in that time is huge.
These days is $1.2 million.
All right. No big.
So I don't know if you caught the date of that census, but it was 1860. So the Civil War is coming. He fought from the beginning to the end, which is, I feel like that's kind of rare.
Kind of rare, and he survived it, which, not that like everybody died, but I mean.
Yeah. Yeah.
Didn't look great for people who did, so.
He ended up being severely wounded. This is where it came up with Antietam.
Ah, okay.
At the Battle of Antietam.
Okay.
Don't have any specifics of the injury, but I don't believe he was fighting worthy after that, which may have helped him survive the whole thing.
Yeah, that's true.
So he was promoted to captain and put on the staff of General James Longstreet.
Okay.
Towards the end of the war. Sims was with General Longstreet when the Confederate Army was retreating westward from Richmond, being chased down by Union forces. And Robert E. Lee decided to stop the Confederate forces in Appomattox.
Well, all right.
So they were almost surrounded in Appomattox. There was a lot of generals back then. You know, nowadays there wouldn't be generals together for the most part.
Yeah.
In like one area. So there were like generals all over the place. So you got General Robert E. Lee, the head general, stopping the forces, and after a lot of thought, decided to meet with General Grant of the Union to discuss a surrender. But there were no cell phones or radios.
In 1860s?
Yeah. So there was no way for coordination of people to know to stop fighting while these talks were going on. So,
and there was a lot of like militia fighting and all kinds of crazy stuff. And
yeah. So while General Lee waited to meet with General Grant, General Longstreet sent a message to General Gordon that he should send a flag of truce to General Sheridan
oh my God.
to suspend hostilities while General Grant and General Lee talked.
I hope you didn't expect me to actually follow that, because what?
So, Confederate general told another Confederate general to send a flag of truce to the Union general that was on the other, like, that they were in.
Right, like,
battle
pause
with
your
at
battle
that
because
time.
we're having talks over here.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Gordon asked Sims to carry the flag.
Okay.
Now, they don't usually have, like, truce flags just rolled up, ready to go. So he had...
Yeah, I think that'd be a pretty discouraging military tactic. Like, oh, make sure you pack the white flag just for when, or like if it's a thing.
So Sims happened to have a white towel with a red border.
Okay. I was going to make a weird joke about a terrible towel, but then it got too detailed and different.
Yeah.
Carry on.
These aren't just normal towels, though. So apparently, our boy Robert Sims just bought these towels when they were in Richmond the week prior.
Okay.
He bought 3 of them for $40 a piece.
Holy balls.
So
I wouldn't pay
did the
$40 a piece now for a towel.
So I did the math. Well, the internet did the math.
Sure.
$624 a piece.
But
Now,
why, though?
Either these were the softest towels in the world
I still wouldn't pay that.
or the last towels in the South.
I still wouldn't pay that.
So, yeah, pretty expensive
I'll dry
towel.
by the air eventually.
And he's got to stab this joker with a sword and wave it in battle after he just spent $624 on a towel.
Yikes.
Now, General Gordon asked him, or begged him, not to let their men see the flag start. So he didn't want his guys to be all butthurt about surrendering.
Sure.
You know, because there's a pride thing.
I mean, yeah.
So Sims got on his horse and galloped towards the enemy lines, but not waving a flag.
Oh, God. That's
Getting
not going to
shot
end
at.
well.
Yeah, getting shot at.
That's not going to end well.
It does end well.
Wow.
Right before he got to him, he starts waving the flag, and they stop, and he ends up meeting with General Custer.
Hey, I know that name.
Yeah, another general that
Sure.
happens to be in this same spot.
No big deal.
And General Custer said, no, we will not, because we won't stop, call a truce, because that's not what I do. That's for General Grant to do.
Who was the one who was part of the, hey, call a
Yeah.
truce because we're having this talk?
Yeah. So,
I was going to make a sexist comment. I'm sorry. I was going to say, like, the freaking pride of men, though. Like,
yeah.
knock it off.
So that's basically what it was. He didn't want to undermine General Grant and say,
and I can respect
Yeah.
that, but also, I'm sure there's a pride factor. And so I'm just like,
yeah. So
Come on, bro.
he got back on his horse, rode back, and General Custer kept the $624 towel.
did he puncture it prior?
Well, I mean, I think he stabbed.
Was he just, like, holding it and waving it, or was he?
It was with his sword.
Okay. So,
So
yeah.
it was stabbed.
But I got to keep it.
Yeah.
That just
But the
means that you
fighting
can,
did
like,
stop.
tie your towel better, stick it through the hole, and nice
But
little toga.
the fighting did stop.
Oh, that's good.
So he
did-
basically said
No, but okay.
but did it because he didn't have the authority to do it, but understood why it needed to be done. So
Okay.
there was a truce,
So
but wasn't a truce.
Yeah. So did Sims know where the order had kind of come from and was able to explain that.
He
and so
told
he
him
said
where it was
like
coming down from.
and kind of said like I can't exactly trust that and I can't exactly speak on behalf of him, so no. But also I'm going to kind of respect it and let it ride because a truce is not giving up.
Yeah.
Okay.
So kind of like weird battle rules.
Yeah. Okay.
You know, back then it was like a gentleman's game.
Yeah.
Especially like, it's not the Revolutionary War, but it really was during the Revolutionary War. They just stand in a line, wait until each other lowered their weapons, and then fire at the same time kind of deal.
Yeah.
But, so, he got the job done.
I mean, rock on.
Without getting the job done, technically.
Yeah. Because I really did not see him surviving that run-up. Yikes.
That towel, though, General Custer gave to his wife, who cut it into pieces, and it is spread throughout, like it's at the
so he gave it
courthouse.
to Custer.
Yeah.
Okay, so he didn't keep it.
Custer kept it.
Okay, I understand.
The names are confusing.
Gotcha.
There's generals everywhere.
I got you. So Sims paid all the money for it, gave it to Custer. Custer.
Yeah, well, Custer kind of took it from him.
I mean, sure.
But, yeah, Custer kept it, gave it to his wife, cut it up into pieces. There's like a piece at the Appomattox Courthouse where the surrender took place.
That's cool.
There's like a piece of it in the Smithsonian. I don't know which one.
Yeah, there's a lot.
But the Smithsonian has a piece. And so I thought that's pretty
cool.
interesting. So Sims returned home to Rock Hill after the war, and his net worth had dwindled to only $11,000.
Well, yeah, when you give up a $650 towel.
Yeah. So that's $190,000 in today's Moonese. But that was still significantly wealthy.
Way more than
especially
I got in my pockets.
Especially when a lot of fellow soldiers were returning to nothing.
Yeah.
So I'd say he came out quite well, survived, had something to come home to. Sims didn't stop serving South Carolina after that. He was a state senator from 1868 to 1870. He became Rock Hill's mayor in 1873. Where I got this information noted that even Rock Hill's historic landmark sign doesn't even note that he was the mayor.
Which is strange.
They pretty much, I mean, there's not a lot of room there.
Yeah. They
kind of just say he carried the truce flag.
Yeah. The kind of more interesting aspect of it, I guess.
Member of the York County Board of Equalization from 1875 to 1878. Not real sure what that means, but could be an interesting story from a past slave owner. Mm-hmm. If it's kind of like a civil rights equalization thing. Was a trustee at the Yorkville Female Academy, principal at the Rock Hill Male Academy. In 1877, he was named South Carolina Secretary of State and served for 3 terms.
No big.
President Grover Cleveland appointed him inspector for the Charleston Customs House in 1885, which is a gorgeous building, by the way, still there.
Okay.
So I guess he was inspector, like in charge of the customs house, because Charleston was a big port city. Mm-hmm. So he was in charge of everything that went in and out of Charleston, I guess. And died in 1898. I didn't look up when he was born, but
fair enough.
So quite
a busy fellow, very loyal to
South Carolina. Yeah.
Very civically oriented, which I would say, based on what I'm going to talk about, like civil duty and civil pride are huge. So in that general area, if nothing else. So
interesting fella. I read a newspaper article that was basically, it was from the 1860s and was like his first-hand account of the few days prior to the surrender and him waving the truce flag. So
I'm like, clearly,
post
as
a link to that.
My last few stories have gone, that's become way more interesting to me to hear directly from a person. So
it was
cool.
a lot of nonsense.
I believe it, yeah.
But I did get the tidbit about $40 for a towel from it.
Yeah, that's nuts.
So.
That's nuts.
Yeah.
I want to know what kind of luxury a towel was that it cost $40, or how fancy as crap that towel was.
It probably
a little bit of both,
luxury.
but
yeah.
Holy balls! How do you justify spending that on a towel ever?
Because everybody, because towels are primarily made of cotton, and the cotton during the Civil War was hurt because all the
everybody was fighting,
landowners
and all the land
gone.
was getting trampled.
Yeah, the land was getting burned up. Whatever they were using, whatever they did have, they were using for uniforms. So yeah, I don't think towels were on the top of the list for cotton.
Yeah. I mean, I can see that, but still. But then why would you pay $40 for it? And while you're at war, why you like, oh, let me make a pit stop and grab these $40 towels?
Homie needed to dry. They said all he had were the towels and a toothbrush. So
priorities,
maybe
man.
The guy
He was a
likes
clean
his
man.
Towels, yeah.
He's a clean man.
And he's been out there in the mud. I mean, if he was in
I ain't spending $40 on a towel that I'm gonna clean mud off myself.
If he was in that part of the state, he may have been through the lost shoes thing. Up in Shenandoah Valley.
Where like they're walking through the mud and it comes out?
Yeah. Okay. And their shoes stay in the mud and they keep going and they're like still finding shoes to this day.
Yeah, that's nuts.
Up there.
That's really cool, but really nuts.
So he may have lost his shoes. Needs to wipe his feet.
I ain't wiping my muddy feet with $40 towels.
With white towels.
Yeah.
Day. I don't know.
$40 in a day. All right, so before I get into my story, I'm going to tell us just a quick little history of the Rock Hill area. So originally, Catawba, Native Americans settled in that area. There were European settlers as early as the 1830s. And then there were, at one point, the European settlers said, hey, let's put in a railroad. The people lived nearby and said, not really interested, but there were 3 prominent families that said, hey, you can put it through our land. And so when they mapped it all out, they said, okay, we'll put it over here on that rocky hill.
Huh.
And, over time, the town became known as Rock Hill. So the first train arrived in March of 1852. A post office opened the next month, and slowly more people came into the area, and it just sort of built from there. Yeah. The town then officially incorporated. I actually found 2 very different dates on this. And so I'm just going to throw them both out there, and if you know better, please tell me, and I assume you'll just tell me I need to do better research. But nonetheless, found 2 very different dates that were 1870 and 1892. So
it's only
22 years.
Yeah. Real quick though. It seems like in the research that I've done so far for this podcast that getting a post office in town is like today's equivalent of Facebook official.
It makes it legit. You're a real town if you get a post office.
Yeah. Does your town have a post office? It's not a real town. Are y'all a couple on Facebook? You aren't together then.
Yep.
It's kind of...
That's fair. I see that. But what I did learn about them incorporating as a town is they actually made 3 different attempts. And there was just a lot of back and forth of there's not enough people. As it went from more kind of farming to a little more business, it was, well, those people are just temporary. They're not real citizens. They're not going to stay. And so it was a lot of back and forth that way. And so 3rd time was the charm. 22-year difference in when that may or may not have happened. But nonetheless.
Yeah. My guy who lived there around that time, a lot of times they were just referring to the county that he went back to or the area.
Okay.
So they never really said Rock Hill until later.
Yeah.
So I guess it probably wasn't a place.
Yeah.
While he was there, for the most part.
I can see that. Some current interesting facts, I guess. We recently crowned Miss USA 2019 from North Carolina. Go North Carolina. She's from Rock Hill. She's on the Wikipedia page.
Huh.
Made it.
I thought everybody was saying she was from Charlotte.
I think she lives here now.
Okay, she's a Charlotte lawyer or something like that. Okay.
Yeah. So she lives here now, and that's where, like, she's been in this area for a while, but I believe she was born in Rock Hill.
Okay.
Is my understanding. I could be wrong, but that's the way I've understood it. Parts of The Patriot were filmed in Rock Hill, in kind of like the outskirts of Rock Hill, which is actually really interesting because as I was reading up on the history and even just the development of the town itself, I was actually getting very like vivid imagery in my brain that was fueled on the imagery of The Patriot. And so when I read that part, I was like, well, there you go. It is the 4th largest city in the Charlotte metropolitan area. So the Charlotte, Concord, and Gastonia, and then Rock Hill. So in that greater area, it's the 4th biggest city.
Okay.
And the gentleman who is the creator of the characters Snap, Crackle, and Pop is from Rock Hill.
Whoa-bee.
Oh, no. Good old Rice Krispies.
Huh. When was that? Oh, that's old.
It's old, but not as old as you would think. I think it was like the 70s or 80s.
Oh, okay.
I didn't put that actual date down, but
Okay.
you can Google it. It definitely says it. I just didn't include that part. Also, as we were driving around picking up the beer, I know I specifically made a comment of the street signs had this little like flower-looking emblem on them. And I made the comment of when you're driving around Charlotte, you know, you've got the crowns on some of the street signs. But then if you go into different areas, I know there's parts of like Elizabeth and stuff that have different little kind of logos on the street signs.
South End has the historic South End stuff.
Yeah, and so it's kind of by neighborhood and all this stuff. And so I was like, I wonder what that little flower thing means. Well,
you're going to tell us.
Unintentionally came across why. And this is not my story, just a fun fact since it was a conversation we had. It's actually 6 arrows that create a star. It's not a flower at all. But so those 6 arrows kind of curve around and point towards the center. And the tips of all of the points of those arrows create a star. And each, obviously not on a street sign, they're all white. But if you look at the official logo of it, each arrow is a different color. Okay. And each of the 6 represent a different piece of what built Rock Hill.
Okay.
And so they represent business, education, historic preservation, gardens and environment, arts and culture, and transportation and utilities.
So all the things that make up all cities.
But it's the things that they specifically are really focused on and continue to be about.
They about that life.
Yes. And so the 6 arrows point towards the center, making a star, which is meant to show the progressive nature and the strength in working toward a unified goal. Okay. And so how all those areas come together to push the city forward and make it stronger and to move forward in different areas. So the actual point of I can call it a story. It's not quite a story, but what I have to say today is actually kind of related to the topics in the logo. Okay. But that's not the point really at all. I came across multiple descriptions of the civitas.
Okay.
And
it's Latin for something.
It sure is. And so basically, there is the intersection of Dave Lyle Boulevard and Gateway Boulevard. And the city commissioned these 4 statues to be placed in this intersection. And they're 22-foot statues made of bronze. And there was actually a 5th statue added in the rotunda of the Rock Hill City Hall a year after the rest of them were put in there. I found significantly less description on that, except that it exists. So,
well, it's in the rotunda.
Yeah.
Nobody knows what a rotunda is. That's why there's no description, because people can't find it.
Oh, goodness. Okay, so Civitas is Latin for civic pride. I've also read civic spirit, but
Same.
yeah,
Feeling.
same concept. It was actually commissioned by the city from a woman named Audrey Flack in 1988, which is a year I'm partial to.
Yeah.
Came into the world in.
I thought you were going to say Audrey Hepburn, though. I was like, whoa.
Audrey Flack. I was honestly a little surprised to see that it was a woman that was commissioned to. Mm-hmm. And I realized 1988, we're not talking ancient times, but I mean, still.
Yeah, they could vote back then.
What? So they were commissioned in 88. They were put up in April of 1991. And like I said, the fifth one that was put in the rotunda was in 92. And they were designed as a female version of Michelangelo's David.
They were designed to be one thing.
What?
So these 4 statues were made to look like one thing?
It's kind of like when you're up in Uptown in Trade and Tryon, there's that intersection, you've got 4 different statues.
Yeah.
It's a similar concept. You've got 4 statues. Each one is a woman. The statues are very, very similar, but they do have some differences that are important and significant.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, but you were saying that they were inspired by David, Michelangelo's David. Mm-hmm. So all 4 are like David. So it just made me think they were all 4 the same if they were just a female version of David.
They're not just a female version, but it's inspired by that, and they are all very, very similar, but there is a significant difference on each one. Okay. My understanding is the overall body and the entire woman herself is the same, but she has her arms raised and is holding this sort of disc, and each disc has something different into it, which is meant to represent something different. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So, in terms of the actual body of the woman, it's meant to symbolize kind of this history moving forward. So, she's got lots of ribbons and the material of her clothing that slowly turned into wings on her back. And so, this is meant to symbolize the textile history of the area being the foundation, but then also transitioning into the growth and forward movement that it allowed the city to have. And this is the same on all of them. And this is actually meant, this entire project was meant to show, or it relates to the similarities that Rock Hill has to Florence, Italy, which seemed super exotic for Rock Hill.
Okay.
But this was done because, on the one hand, Rock Hill had a textile industry that actually paralleled Rome's in its like size and influence. And then also Florence was a city that had a textile industry, but it faded because it was so affected by Rome's growing textile industry. So it's basically, we have a city that's a relatively prominent city with all of this textile development. However, there's a semi-bigger city that's sort of right next door that starts growing so fast that it starts pulling all of the kind of resources and industry away. And so it's very similar to Rock Hill and Charlotte and just that entire development. And so that was a lot of the heart behind the comparisons as well. And so like I said, each woman is more or less the same, but she's holding this sort of disc up. And each disc represents something different. So the one has gears inside of it, and that's meant to represent business and industry. One has flames inside of it, and that's meant to represent knowledge. One has stars inside of it, and that's meant to represent inspiration and creativity. And then one has lightning bolts in it, which is meant to represent energy. And these come together and are all in this one intersection, kind of pointed toward each other to symbolize unity, teamwork, and togetherness. And so it's kind of this, coming together of the community, coming together of all these different aspects of industry and the area, and how it is both historically representative and pushing them forward into the future. And while not exactly related to the city's logo at all, it actually very much relates to the city's logo.
Interesting. But I just want to point out that these are not like David at all.
Why?
There's nothing about them that is like David other than maybe their stone sculptures.
Bronze.
And of people. Or yeah.
Well, I think it's more of a stylistic
so they're
thing.
not even like David. They're not like David at all.
I think it's a stylistic thing. And I think you'd kind of have to see the two side by side to compare. Because also what I imagined while reading text about it and then when I looked up photos of it were wildly different. So I do have to say is like, on the one hand, like these chicks had abs. And I was like...
Oh, yeah, David had muscles.
But I mean like, it was like she's wearing kind of like a, really crop top bra type of shirt, wavy material thing. And like her entire stomach is exposed. And like... And we're not just talking nice, slightly defined. We're talking ripped 8-pack abs happening here. That it's almost like
it's a
wait, that is in fact a woman's head. Huh, okay. Strange. So there's that aspect.
But
I think it's really more a stylistic thing. Or I think it's like the subtle nuances of the way in which it's kind of like ebbs and flows of the sculpture itself versus I don't know.
Yeah,
I can understand it. I can't articulate it.
I don't. Even if I looked at him, I wouldn't understand it.
Okay.
I mean, David's arms are down by his side. He's not holding anything. It's stone, not bronze. He's a male. He has no clothes.
I mean, she's barely clothed, which is what I'm going to get into in a second.
She has clothes.
So...
Wings. David ain't got no wings.
So... Again, we're talking a female artist as well. She currently lives in New York. She's still active. She's been commissioned for a lot of kind of historical city pieces. But what I thought was maybe most interesting about the entire thing is, one, I just really like symbolism. So I can respect the amount of detail that went into these sculptures and what they represent and all the back thought that goes into it, because that kind of stuff just intrigues me. But... maybe the most funny and interesting thing that happened after their, I was going to say conception, but after their creation, is it wasn't but days after they were actually erected in that square, and all the priests and religious people had a fit because she's barely clothed, and what she's wearing is mostly just kind of like loose material that's wrapped around her, because again, this material slowly turns into wings and it's meant to have this historical textile context. And so this artist makes her sculptures very realistic. And so this like thin piece of fabric is going across her chest. And so you can see her breasts and you can see like nipples protruding.
Yeah.
And the religious people in the area were so like outraged and scandalized by this.
Yeah.
That it wasn't but days after these were erected that workers had to come out with metal files and like shave her nipples down so that they weren't showing.
Female mutilation.
Yes. And I read actually a lot of like really random blogs and article commentaries of like, oh God, oh, it hurts. Oh. Like, but they were just so kind of scandalized and upset by it that, yeah, that was the answer, was let's go like bring a metal file and file down the statue.
You can't be putting that kind of artwork up in the Bible Belt.
Yeah, don't you
what
dare.
Are you thinking? Just because you can in Charlotte doesn't mean you can't outside of Charlotte.
But apparently this is not an uncommon thing, because as I was kind of searching into it a little bit more, there was even like, and like boo hiss on France and whatever, because, we're America, so we do that. But there was even like a more current French president who there was some sort of artwork commissioned and like lost his crap over like an accurate portrayal of a woman's body. And that's what all the comments were like, this happened in South Carolina too. And like people were just blowing up about it. Mm-hmm. And so it's just really interesting to me of like, I understand the limits of like something maybe pornographic and like there should be not necessarily that it's wrong to exist, but maybe it shouldn't be as visible for people who aren't ready to take it in yet or whatever. But just like an accurate portrayal of a body was just so interesting. But I just thought that was so funny. And I can understand it per the logic of the South and the Bible Belt and all of that. Like, I can see how easily that would happen. But it's just so ridiculous. It's so ridiculous. And yeah, like, as a woman, I sit there and I listen to that story and I'm like, oh, it hurts. That's terrible. But, and yeah, I mean, all the pictures that you see of it now, there's, just a nice little bump. And she's got the artist has pictures on her website that aren't as clear and direct, but to me, I could see that, they used to be there and all that kind of stuff. And so I just find it really interesting. And how even in as recent as the 90s, this is still such an issue.
Yeah.
So.
What they need to do is maybe give her some guidelines.
Right, that's what I mean too, is like
literally defiling her work.
Right, and that's what I was thinking as an artist, like, you've been commissioned, you've been paid to do a work, and we can kind of understand this on a graphic level, but you've been paid to do something, and someone says, okay, cool, thank you, I accept this, but now I'm going to change it. And we've experienced that ourselves too, but how do you say, oh, I did this piece of art, and even something so little as, 2 tiny bumps on a statue, but how do you come in and say, like, where is the line of, well, this is no longer the work I presented you with, so even though you're going to credit it with me or, like, credit it to me or blame me for it or whatever, where is the line where it's no longer actually my work? And I just think this is a very interesting topic.
By the way, your decibel level has went up by 10.
I get very passionate about women's rights. I can't help it.
Jesus. You were almost yelling at me a minute ago.
I didn't mean to.
It's going to sound weird. You went from talking normal to, I understand, but...
I have decibel problems. Women's rights get me very riled up. I have a lot of passion about... I don't think the world is a terrible place. I don't think we are, wildly suffering on a daily basis here in America, but I do think there's so many, like, institutional things that the bigger problem is that people don't even see them as a problem because...
Why are you preaching to me?
I'm not. I'm just saying this is why I'm getting so riled up so quickly and louder.
Well, don't.
That's what I gotta say to you. But that's pretty much my story. That's what I've got. I just really like the history. I like the symbolism, kind of hidden meaning or dual meanings. I just think are super interesting. Mm-hmm. And I like the commentary on the feminism, women's rights type of thing that goes with it, and just all of the ridiculousness that follows that story. But all in all, it was my first trip down into Rock Hill area. It seemed pretty interesting. I would really love to wander around it some more. Like you said, like seeing the actual street signs with the historical markers on it. I read an article about they have almost like walking tours where if you find a historical building, what they have now is they've like upgraded to the digital sphere. And so they've got these sort of like banners out front of historical places, and it's got a QR code, and you can scan it and get kind of that auditory history, and then it'll point you to another spot, and you can walk around the town and get almost like an audio tour without even being involved with the tour. And I just thought that was a really cool way to preserve history.
There's an app for that.
I mean, there is, and I think that's so cool.
That's something people don't say that much anymore. There's an app for that. It's just understood that there's an app for it.
Absolutely.
There are a couple things I want to hit on real quick. Untapped Festival happened last weekend.
Untapped or Fire Festival?
Yeah. We didn't go, but if you're listening and want to tell us about your experience...
Yes.
I think we would be very interested.
Yes.
Because we don't want to give our opinion on it. having not went.
Yes.
But if we could give other people's opinions and play it off as our opinions,
I mean, I don't know about that.
that would be fun.
It was something we obviously, based on the nature of what we do, were very interested in going. Ended up being a sort of last minute decision that we just couldn't make it. After starting to hear reports from it, we're maybe a little grateful that we hadn't been able to make it. However, now it's, we just are really interested on, the people who had both a very good experience and both a very bad experience. We want to hear all about it.
I heard some were like, oh, it was fine.
Right.
It was a beer festival.
I think a lot of it came down to the timing of if you were turned away and you left, or if you happened to busy yourself and came back at the right time where they did let you in, or I don't know. So we'd love to hear all about it. We'll definitely give you credit and talk about it, even though Drew wants to play it off as his own thoughts. Yeah,
I'll pretend I'm you if you send in your thoughts.
We'll let him do a dramatic reading of what you sent in.
And if you're a female, I have been known to do a female voice.
Oh, boy. There's video of this, guys. This is not a joke. Renfest 2018. It's something special.
I'm quite the actor. Another thing.
He wore a bonnet and an apron, guys. With frills. Go ahead.
We are fans of the South End area. Mm-hmm. But I don't know if you've noticed. We haven't talked about this. And I saw something last night. I was like, I'm going to bring it up during the podcast.
Well, okay.
South End is turning into Chain City. There is nothing but franchises. So what I just read about was Pike's Soda Shop is closing down.
Oh.
For a chain. Is going to move in. It's nothing but chains from outside of the Charlotte area.
I don't like it.
That was one of the cool parts about South End was local stuff, historic.
Yes.
But it's nothing but...
It's historic South End.
Yeah.
Chains are not historic.
Yeah, what's
unless you were literally the first location of a McDonald's or a whatever.
Yeah.
You're not cool or historic or anything. Get out.
Yeah.
Sorry.
But that's what it's
becoming.
Like chains. I mean, Atherton Mills...
Don't put them in South End.
Atherton Mills is going to be full of them.
Yeah.
There's no local shops, really.
So you waited to just bring this up so I could be sad on the podcast?
So Design Center, now that Pikes is leaving, is going to be pretty much nothing but outside of Charlotte chains.
Boo. I'm not a fan.
Yep.
We'd love to hear your thoughts on it, too. I want to cry over it. This is stupid. Why'd you just get me all worked up and upset right before we end the podcast? That's just mean.
I just came to the realization last night, and I was like...
End of an era.
Yeah.
Let me break our heart on a live
we'll
podcast.
Have to find another place that we like better.
Send your suggestions of what we should like better. Tell us why we should like your place better than South End.
Mm-hmm. And don't try to pull one over and go with Loso. That's not it, Chief.
Pal. Goodness. Well, thanks for listening. Hope it was some entertainment for your ears.
Like, subscribe, tell your mama.
If your mama likes beer and shenanigans.
Yeah. Or, just tell anybody.
Join the conversation. Tell us all the things. We'd love to, for real, hear your feedback and thoughts on the festival, on different neighborhoods, on how we're doing. Any and all of it. We'd be happy to take it in, to share it with the world.
Yeah, and now's the best time to interact with us because nobody else is. So you have a 100% guaranteed response rate.
He's not wrong. So, it's pathetic on our end. It's not pathetic. It sounds really sad on our end. And I would like to think that even if we got, 1,000 replies a week, we would at least acknowledge each one of them. But
hey,
get well begins.
We have 100% response rate right now.
He's not wrong.
So hit us up.
Yeah. But that's all for this week. So thanks, guys. And we will catch you all next week.
Check you later.
Bye.